Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods. And now, from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning and welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. We have a show today with 2 very distinguished gentlemen. We were actually trying to schedule the show closer to Memorial Day, but scheduling got in the way and it was difficult to get everybody in the same room. But after, and I've lived here, this is my 22nd year, Memorial Day for some has become a social media event where people mark their summers, their holidays, by the calendar. And the way people get information these days, it's so instantaneous. And there's always an outpouring of affection and emotion. And perhaps it's a good thing that we were able to reschedule the show a few weeks afterwards, where the noise has maybe quieted down a little bit. We want to have a discussion today about the changing demographics, Dorothy, that we've referenced over the years here has always had to do with not the golfers moving into town, but the military families who have called Moore County home, and how it's changed our real estate landscape, how it's changed the urban landscape. Yep. Right? Yep. But there is another demographic as well, and that has to do with the growing presence of past military service personnel who have transitionalized, some say retire, moved to the area. And my guests today and their conversation, I think, is going to focus a lot about the transitions that a lot of the military members make when they leave the service and what the next chapter in their lives may look like. Trust me, as you get older, you think you've hit the end, and then you have 5 more chapters, and they keep going, and the book keeps getting thicker and thicker, and it's not related to age. My first guest is Colonel Walter Havenstein, who has been, I guess, Walter, you've been here in Pinehurst for 3 years now?
3 years, yes.
Where did you move from?
We moved from Westlake, Texas, just outside Dallas-Fort Worth area.
And did you just put a pin on a map and say, this is where I'm coming? How did you get here?
Well, in fact, my father-in-law has lived here in Pinehurst for 26 years, and part of our interest was to be closer to him as he reached near 100 now. And it was also an opportunity to bring my son and daughter-in-law and our granddaughters from Texas to North Carolina to refocus their business careers.
You've been all over the world. Your resume could take up the entire show. What is it about the culture of Moore County that has either caught you by surprise or has been a great reason for landing here?
Well, I think when we first started coming to Moore County, when my father-in-law and mother-in-law moved here 26 years ago, it was a rather sleepy county, and Pinehurst was primarily focused on the golf community. We've seen, especially in the last 15 years, a huge influx as the military started to grow the presence in Fayetteville and over at Fort Bragg, and the influence that special operations units had on the changing demographics here in the county. And that, frankly, was very exciting. And to see both the medical industry, the healthcare industry expand so quickly, and the presence of the military here was very, I think, pronounced, and it was exciting to see.
Most of your career was spent with the Marine Corps. You specialized in tactical communication and systems acquisition management. What does that mean?
buying things for the military, and in my case, buying electronics and electronic warfare equipment, and then transitioning my own transition into that industry.
Tell me about the Legion of Merit Award, which you were given. What is
Well,
that?
Legion of Merit is the highest non-combative award that the military gives, and it was probably more as a result of my experience and work as Chief of Staff of the 4th Marine Division in New Orleans. That division is our largest division, and as it turned out, a very active division, because even though it's a reserve division, about a third of our units, our ground force units, were on active duty at any given time during the late 90s and continue to be that way.
You are actively involved in Moore County right now on a volunteer basis in different organizations.
Yes. Yeah, I'm president of the Sandhills chapter of the Military Officers Association of America, active with the Marine Corps League and Toys for Tots program, and wherever I can continue to serve, which is really kind of the message I would tell our veterans as they transition from active service or reserve service. You never need to stop serving, and there are many opportunities here in Moore County to help you do that.
Your commitment to service and your philanthropy extends to your alma mater?
Yeah, for sure. I sat for almost 10 years on the Naval Academy Foundation Board of Governors and Board of Trustees, and I got my start in life being born in Annapolis, but then having gone through the Naval Academy, it really set the foundation for everything that happened afterwards.
Right. We were 4 years apart in school, but our teams would compete. I went to Lafayette.
Oh yeah,
up in the Lehigh Valley.
Another Patriot League
exactly
competitor. Right?
Exactly, and to this day, we're in our 60s. We go back and we watch and we see the sports and the teams. It's like it was yesterday.
Well, it was, except in the context of Naval Academy, 28% of the students at the Naval Academy today, the midshipmen, are female, which is very different than the 0% when I went through the Naval Academy. And I got to tell you, females have had a tremendously positive effect on our military, and those service academy graduates are absolutely first rate.
Yeah. Do you travel much?
Well, I traveled a lot until we came here permanently 3 years ago to Pinehurst. I get away and travel out west a little bit, and then up to the D.C. area where my family was originally from.
Since you have been here 3 years, the gentleman that has joined you has been here just over a year, Robert Milligan, who I've had the pleasure to get to know over the last year and a half. How did you two hook up?
It was very serendipitous. We were at the craft festival in last October.
Oh, no kidding!
And
the Holly Craft.
And he came by and just said hi. The MOA team had a little booth there. He came by and said hi, and said sometime in the future we'd get together. We traded contact information, and as it turned out, we had a lot of mutual friends in the D.C. area, and I can't tell you how glad I am that Bob's come here to the Sandhills area.
That's right. So your paths did not cross before, but they have now.
Yes.
But you've got legs that go back years and people that you know in common.
Yes.
Bob, I asked Walt how he got here. You have had a very distinguished career. You've been an officer, never enlisted, but a teacher, an executive. Your resume is impressive. It's difficult to decipher, but you've been involved in many aspects of the business of the military. Is that accurate?
Correct. That's correct. I was a Navy Supply Corps officer. So basically, as a Supply Corps officer, while I was not driving the ships or flying aircraft, I was responsible for the logistics and financial and the support for the units that I served or was involved in. Okay. And you ask how we came to North Carolina. I'm originally from North Carolina. I was born in Hickory, North Carolina.
I did not know that.
And grew up in High Point and got my undergraduate degree at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So
right.
North Carolina was always home to me. And while we had spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C., as a result of my active duty days and even my post-Navy employment, we always knew we wanted to get back to North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And so Maria and I looked at the western part of the state because I had lived in Hendersonville, North Carolina for a number of years, which is just out about 20 miles from Asheville. And so we loved that area, but we have some very dear friends that had relocated to Pinehurst. And so when we started looking, that Pinehurst was a draw because of the relationships that we had with individuals that had moved down here. Plus, I love to play golf, so to me it was a natural.
Right.
And so we've been down here since last September.
You graduated UNC in 72, so
correct.
You two guys were a year apart. How is it possible that you hadn't hooked up prior to this? It's amazing to me that you had not.
Well, I think Walt, while he was part of the Department of the Navy as a Marine Corps officer, I had very little interface with the Marines during my Navy career, my active duty career. I spent time overseas supporting Marines and providing a lot of support, but it was just unfortunate that we didn't meet each other until we actually came to Pinehurst. And as Walt indicated, it's serendipitous that we met each other.
Yep.
But Walt's wife, Judy, and Walt knew my wife before I had actually met them. My wife works for Ann Hand, which is a jewelry designer, and Walt and Judy, I believe, have purchased some of Ann Hand's jewelry in the past. And so
Crazy.
When Walt and I met, I went over to my wife and I said, "You never guess who I just ran into." And she immediately said, "I know both Walt and Judy."
Small world.
It is a small world.
It is.
In the 22 years I've been here since 1999, this was, as you described it was a golf community, a resort area. Today, those demographics have shifted, and I've had the privilege of working with a lot of the psychologists who are in the Air Force, the Army, who are here, who have moved here, many from Colorado. And I get to hear all about the assistance that they provide the active duty military. You guys, your focus is more not on the active duty military so much as it is the members of the military who have transitionalized away and who are trying to build a different type of a life. Both of you have one thing in common, and Bob, I know you obviously better than I do Walter. The thing you have in common is both of you are very didactic in the way you speak. You're both teachers, and you both have this undercurrent, I sense, of wanting to pay it forward, and there's a generosity in your providing information to assist others. That's what I pick up in between the lines. But your focus is not on the retirement. You don't like the word retirement.
No,
retired military.
No, well, first of all, I think retirement, it could leave the wrong impression. When you tell somebody you're retired,
right,
the tendency is low energy, maybe not one of being active and stuff like that. And yet, so I think there's a lot of opportunities for, and I'll use the term older individuals such as myself. I'm 72, so I'm still pretty active. We have an opportunity to, as you say, pay it forward. I had a great Navy career. I remained involved in assisting transitioning military personnel, both senior enlisted and officers, into private industry. And so I want to continue to be involved as long as I can. And there are a lot of opportunities in the local area to remain active and be involved. Walt mentioned MOA. That's an opportunity for individuals to, in fact, give back to the community. And you mentioned two things earlier. You asked Walt what he and his wife found about Moore County. My wife and I came from Northern Virginia. We've spent quite a bit of time in the Washington, D.C. area. And things that have impressed Maria and I are the openness, the friendliness, honestly, the integrity of the individuals in this area. We have just been so impressed with individuals that we've met, the friendliness of people. And candidly, in Northern Virginia, you don't always run into that. But people are just, they're warm and welcoming. And so to me, that has been one of the biggest draws that we've seen. We like the small town atmosphere.
Right.
But we also enjoy the fact that people are so warm and welcoming here.
Both of you have a perspective that I think is valuable to share. I can just see it in your eyes, and I can see it in the way you look at each other as you're talking. There's some knowing smiles going on, that you have some shared backgrounds. And we want to come back in the second set and talk about how you see yourselves as benefiting the generation of people moving out of the military into civilian life. This is All Things Moore County. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our second set of All Things Moore County. Our guests are Walter Havenstein and Robert Milligan, both Pinehurst residents, both with the world of experience in the military, in serving, and in serving others as they enter their transitional years. Walter, you've been here 3 years. I know Bob has been here a little over a year, but coming down to visit. But here's a funny thing about Bob. So I meet him. He comes down, and Bebop's in town, Bebop's out of town, kicking tires, kind of feeling his way around. He finally, he and Maria finally find a home. They settle in, and he has all these plans. And like an engineer, right, he approaches everything in this very compartmentalized way and very efficient. So he's here. Then he says, I'm going to be out of town. I'm going to go to D.C. I'll be gone for 2 weeks. I'm going to D.C. So we talked in the first set about you all paying it forward. But today, Bob, you still go to D.C. You are an instructor. You teach at the Darden School, and you run a 5-day seminar. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the Rulin seminar is to assist senior military personnel, both enlisted and officers, in helping them make a smooth transition to private industry from active duty. And so it's an opportunity for me to provide assistance to those individuals that are transitioning, that are leaving active duty after 20 or 30 years in some cases, trying to seek that first job in private industry. And so the seminar is focused on topics such as networking, how to network, resume writing, negotiation of compensation. I mean, military personnel have never had to negotiate compensation, as an example. And so those are some of the topics. Attire, what's a proper dress for private industry, especially individuals that are looking for more senior positions. And then interviewing. Again, very few military have actually had to conduct an interview for their jobs.
Right.
And so it's an opportunity to help them get prepared for going after that first job and having what I'll call a smooth or easier transition. I've been doing this now for about 6 or 7 years, and the way to become an instructor is you have to have had a career in the military, a successful career in the military, and you have to have proven yourself in private industry for 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. And so John Rulin, who established the program about 30 years ago, continues to insist that to qualify to be an instructor, you have to have at least met those 2 criteria.
Right.
You mentioned the Darden School. I'm one of their visiting professors, and I participate as part of their executive education program. And so the courses are usually 2 or 3 weeks in length. They're mostly attendees are military, such as U.S. Army, or Navy and Marines, and government civilians that are involved in procurement of weapon systems and our ships or aircraft. So they're actively involved in the program management or oversight of assisting the military obtain the necessary products and solutions or weapon systems so that we'll continue to have a strong national defense. The goal is to work closely during those 3 weeks with those individuals that are on the government side and in private industry to start to build or grow the partnership between the 2 parties. Mm-hmm. It's also, we spend a lot of time talking about how decisions that are made by the government affect or impact decisions that private industry will make. As an example, if the government were to decide to set aside a procurement for small business, that causes individuals to, on the private industry side, how they're going to approach those. If they're not a small business, obviously they can't prime that opportunity, so there's partnership opportunities. Also, those are the kinds of things that we look at. Is it a cost-plus contract? Is it a firm fixed-price contract? Decisions that affect the way that private industry is going to react to those opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing this also for about 5 years.
Unlike other industries where people, quote-unquote, retire, the age group of the people that you're speaking to, much younger than what people associate with the word retirement.
Yes. I mean, you're typically looking at a career military person, let's say that's been 20 years. They could be in their late 30s.
Right.
I mean, if a senior enlisted joined the service when they're 18, 20 years later, they're in their 38, 40, let's say 38 to 42 year range. The same with officers. You take an officer that was commissioned when he was 21, or he or she was commissioned when he was 21 or 22.
Right.
They're going to be in their early 40s, maybe late 40s. They still have a lot of energy and a lot to offer.
More than half their life is still in front of them.
Right. And so I've always taken the approach that you could have at least 2 careers.
Right.
You could have your military career, and you can have a second career in private industry. And that's something that I've really tried to focus on, especially when I'm talking to transitioning military. And that's one reason I tell people, if you're leaving active duty, don't tell somebody you're retiring, because people think of, well, if you're retiring, you're in your 60s or 70s, right, or you don't have the energy or the drive or anything. And our transitioning military personnel have capabilities that private industry really wants to be able to take advantage of. And sometimes transitioning military undervalue their benefit or their value to private industry.
Okay. Walt, as I'm listening to him, I think of a professional athlete who has a 10 or 15-year career in the major leagues. Then, like most athletes, they can't continue, so they have to come out into the private sector. And many of them are not prepared because all they've known since they were teenagers was baseball or football or whatever. That's the comparison I get as I'm listening to him.
Yeah, I think that's right. I transitioned to the private sector when I was 34.
Oh my
so I went from
yeah.
active duty to the reserves. So I continued my Marine Corps
That was
career.
in the early 80s.
Yeah, 83.
83.
And so I spent the next 16 and a half years in the reserves. At the same time, I had transitioned into the aerospace industry and built a career in the aerospace industry at the same time. But at my age, I am retired. Having said that, there are plenty of opportunities like we have at MOA for retired people to still serve. And that's what I would tell people. Yeah, you can go through the 2 transitions or 3 transitions in careers, but at the end of that, when maybe you're willing to have some outside activity in addition to retirement, there's a lot of ways to serve. And I think that's what organizations like MOA provide, maybe what we'll call retired folks, the opportunity, as well as the active duty folks, to continue to serve. And that's what we do at MOA. We serve by providing scholarships to local JROTC units, 8 high schools in the area. We provide veteran support programs where we're supporting active duty for the most part, financial needs that come up that are emergencies that frankly they can't get the resources for. And through our veteran support fund, we provide assistance there. And at the same time, we have a good time in bringing issues to the front of our members here in Moore County that are important to them. We support legislation that supports both active and retired military when it comes to tax reform. And so there are a lot of activities where you can become, like MOA, where you can become active, continue to serve, and fulfill maybe some objective in your retirement program that you might not otherwise think of.
Yeah, the chapter of MOA is a large chapter.
Well, we have about 100 members here in Moore County.
Do you have monthly meetings?
We have monthly luncheons. We have one in about an hour from now.
Oh, is that right?
That's right. And then we kind of take the summer off and then start up again in September, and we'll have a big fundraising activity over at the Pinehurst Country Club in November.
Right.
And then we'll do recognition awards in the spring when we recognize all the scholarship winners of the various JROTC units here in the county.
You know, one of the things they never taught us in college, there was never a course that I remember. It was called fundraising, or it was called thinking outside the box. We in our generation, we grew up and we had specific courses to take. In Moore County, we have so many nonprofit organizations, as you're well aware, sure. Toys for Tots being one of them, and people have to think outside the box to raise funds so their voice is heard above all the noise.
That's exactly right. And so there is a method to that, right?
Okay.
And so
you're going to teach me.
Yeah, we kind of share that. You know, just back to Bob's comment about networking.
Yep.
Part of the association that you get through things like MOA and Toys for Tots and Marine Corps League, those kind of programs, is you get to network and associate with others. So even though I've only been here 3 years, many of the members of MOA have been here 20 years.
Right.
So they know the businesses within the county and the region and where to go to ask. They already know where the philanthropic bent is of the county. Mm-hmm. So we just take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. And if you're not used to asking, that can be a little bit of a a challenge, but when you have the right mission, when you're doing the right kinds of things in a community, the asking gets a lot easier.
Yeah. Moore County, Bob made reference to the friendliness and the warmth and the integrity. It's all, and there's no, like Northern Virginia, there's no anonymity here. You live here, you know people, and it's a very giving community.
Yeah, it is in one sense, but because we don't have a large corporate presence here in the county, other than First Health and a couple other ventures, you really don't have the corporate structure that most agencies that are looking for support depend upon. So most of the smaller businesses here have to be part of that philanthropic bent. And you have to be willing to cultivate those smaller businesses.
Do you have guest speakers at some of your meetings?
Yes. Every meeting we have a guest speaker, and we typically have 4 to 6 of those a year.
Bob is available.
Yeah. Bob
Milligan is. He told me he's available.
Bob would be an excellent, and plus being a member.
Right. Okay.
I think the key is the relevance of the conversation.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what drives the membership to participate.
Right. Let's come back in the third set, speaking with Walter Havenstein and Bob Milligan about the life of transition from the military, living in Moore County, and paying it forward. This is All Things Moore County.
Some sort of operation.
The other part of that is trying to teach people is, listen, nothing happens in the United States economy until somebody sells something. If you can, if you're selling something, you are fundamentally at the essence of our society, capitalist society.
Yeah. Welcome back to our third set. Speaking with Bob Milligan and Walter Havenstein, who there was an author we had on the show a couple of years ago, a very flamboyant guy, was never in the military. He was the son of a prostitute from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a true story. He wore these Hawaiian shirts and these very colorful pants. You remember in the 60s and the 70s how the pro golfers wore the orange pants with the white belts and okay, this was Richard Flint. We brought him here. He actually spoke to the Association of Realtors. His book is called Behavior Never Lies, and it was written for the layman. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, everything that he said in the book is true. You can't listen to sometimes what people say. You just have to watch what they do. In my experience working here in Moore County over these 20-some-odd years, I have noticed a high degree of integrity and accountability on behalf of the families that we serve, who are enlisted, who are active military. And we were talking at the break, they also expect the same accountability from us as civilians. They hold us more accountable than perhaps other civilians will hold us more accountable. We let each other get away with stuff sometimes, but not when you're working with someone that's disciplined. My father was won a Purple Heart. He was World War II. He was decorated. He raised my brother and I. He let us lose. He let us fail. He stood over us, and he just watched, and he knew he was going to have to make us tough. And even though neither one of us were ever in the military, we got that tough love and that discipline, and it's in our DNA. And Bob made a comment in an earlier segment about all the skill sets that some of your students have when they're coming out of the military that makes them advantageous for private industry. And that discipline is part of it, and that accountability is part of it, but there are other parts to it all as well.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in leadership.
Yeah.
Senior military have leadership skills that they've grown up developing and learning those leadership skills as they've moved up the ranks from the most junior enlisted to more senior enlisted. Same with junior officers to senior officers. They have the technical skills. They have team building skills. They know how to build a team and to operate a team. They do hold themselves accountable for the results. I think that you'll find out that a lot of transitioning military will hold themselves accountable, and they're looking for individuals that they're working with to have that same sense of accountability. Sometimes military personnel are disappointed if somebody doesn't have that same self-motivated accountability.
Yeah. Walter, you talked about it before, and they have loyalty skills.
Loyalty.
And it's a skill. And it's a subculture. It's not shared by everybody, but the loyalty is to one another, the teamwork, and that's an important part of working together.
I think they grow dependent upon one another.
Yeah.
All right, and that's not always true in the private sector, right?
Right.
Once you've gone through basic together. Once you've served together, you're dependent and learned how to be dependent upon one another. That's something you take for granted. That is not necessarily true in the private sector.
And it stays with them all their lives. That loyalty.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the abilities that they bring to the table, the skill sets that they bring to the table, they still need to be reinforced for them when they're transitioning and retiring. They still need to have some support behind them to get them to push them into the next level because they're entering a different arena.
Yeah, I think Bob talked a little bit about the ability to network.
Yeah.
With people who have a similar expectation, and that networking happens as you transition. Through a variety of ways, right? It's partially in your next phase of your career, but oftentimes it's through the association with others in things like church, or as you move into a new community, or things like volunteer groups, and that are serving the community. And I think the people transitioning out of the military have a sense of wanting to do that.
Aren't you both impressed by how many entrepreneurial businesses have grown up here, military-based businesses, where people have gotten out of the military, they've started their own business as independent contractors? I'm very impressed.
I think one right here in Moore County is Veterans Guardian.
Yes.
And what Bill Taylor and his colleagues have done there. And they're fulfilling a service-related, support-related, veterans-related need,
right,
that can be served by others, but they seem to have captured a way that is most beneficial to a lot of veterans.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that you see, and this, I think Walt will agree with this, is that individuals that have been in the military recognize the need to be mentors to individuals that maybe didn't have the exact same experiences, but maybe were prior military also. So in private industry, one thing I've always been impressed with was military mentoring new employees, especially employees that had also been in the military. And so I think that's another way that you'll find transitioning military or military that have transitioned to private industry continue to help pay it forward, in that they will provide that leadership or that mentoring to the more junior person. And I do believe that that's a result of the self-discipline that they've learned in the military. And they also, as we've talked about, paying it forward, because somebody probably did the exact same thing to them when they first transitioned or when they first left the military. There was somebody there to assist them along the way.
Mm-hmm. I see a lot of military families who get transferred out of here. They're here for 3 or 4 years, and they're used to the vagabond existence. But they're a pleasure to work with because they come prepared. When they're ready to transitionalize, they're as organized as we try to be on our side of the table, where we ask them for things to do. They have their to-do lists to cross off. They are prepared to answer questions that we ask them to get them in a situation, if, let's say, they're selling their home. Highly organized, quick, a lot of clarity, and you get right to the point. You get to be very expedient and aerodynamic. And it's a pleasure to see. Both of you have a perspective, maybe the last 30, 40 years, that most people don't have. Our military presence in this country, where we are today, how we've grown in Moore County as a military subset of Fort Bragg. Where do you see us in 10 years from now?
If you're talking about Moore County, I see that continuing.
Yes.
Because I think, in particular, from a military standpoint,
Yep.
the work that's done over at Fort Bragg or Fort Liberty or whatever it will be called, is still getting more emphasis, as opposed to less emphasis, and you're seeing that just almost every day. So I think that part is going to continue to expand. I also think that you're going to, they're going to try and keep people for longer periods of time. So spouses are going to be much more active in the economy, running small business, just like you said, starting businesses, or more importantly, serving as employees across the various businesses we have here.
Yes, it's going to continue.
Yeah.
So our growth is going to continue.
I agree. I think in this area, you're going to continue to see the interest and the desire to provide that assistance. I do think that over the next 10 years, and let's face it, when I got commissioned in 1972, Vietnam was still hot and heavy, and so there was a different attitude in certain parts of the country about military.
Right.
I think that we've overcome a lot of that, and I think that the military are welcomed in communities, and I know that in Moore County and in the Pinehurst area in particular, the military are welcomed with open arms. The one thing that I would also say is I believe that we'll continue to see improved opportunities for spouses of military, active duty military. There are a lot of spouse opportunities that I think you'll continue to see. I do think as you start to see military staying in one same location for longer periods of times, that will also give spouses opportunities to start a career, to build upon a career, to start a business. And I think that as long as the Moore County community continues to embrace that, I think it'll be all very positive. I know my wife and I are excited about being here, and that's one thing we're looking forward to, is to watch how things grow over the next 10 to 15 years.
Time is short, unfortunately. We have to wind down, but have you booked Bob yet for that meeting, that MOA meeting?
We'll talk about the fall.
And real quickly, what about people who might be listening who want to reach out to you or get more involved in MOA?
Well, very easy. We have a website, Sandhills MOA, MOAA.org, and it lists all kind of opportunities and special events, as well as how you, if you are eligible, and are eligible as all officers and spouses of officers are eligible, okay, regardless of when you served. And if you go to that website, you will be able to get all the information you need on becoming active with our organization.
Moore County is a great community, and that community keeps changing,
yeah,
but the circle of a community keeps growing. So we stay in lockstep with it. Both you guys are an asset. We're glad to have you in Pinehurst. Bob, it's good to see you. Bob Milligan and Walter Havenstein, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Bill.
Really appreciate you guys coming in.
Thanks, Bill.
This is All Things Moore County. Have a great week.